The question arises when the veil thins and the noise of density no longer satisfies. Is it true that once you awaken, density ceases to be fun? To approach this honestly, you must look not only at what density offered before awakening, but also at what fun itself truly meant to you when you were still immersed in it. Density crafted itself like a grand game. It enticed you with vivid colors, urgent dramas, intoxicating relationships, challenges that seemed monumental, and victories that felt absolute. Within that gravity, every triumph carried the flavor of eternity. Every heartbreak felt like a fracture in the cosmos. Density kept you tethered by convincing you that each experience was final, permanent, unrepeatable. That illusion gave the ride its edge, its thrill, its addictive quality. For many lifetimes you spun within that current, believing that the point was to keep score, to accumulate victories, to stitch meaning from the highs and lows. And in those seasons, yes, density was fun, but only because you were still under the spell of its rules. When awakening begins, the rules are revealed as constructs. You notice how often the same arguments repeat, the same desires cycle, the same wounds return disguised as different faces. What once looked like unique, earth-shaking drama now appears as a patterned loop. It is here the first dissonance arrives. The fun begins to fade, not because the world changed, but because you changed. You are no longer entertained by what you can see through. A magic trick loses its awe when you know where the mirrors hide. The thrill is gone, not because density broke, but because its edges are transparent to you now. And yet this loss of fun is only the beginning, not the conclusion. In the stage of the resonance burn, everything not aligned with your expanding awareness begins to crumble. The hobbies that distracted, the conversations that numbed, the entertainment that once flooded your system with stimulation now feel thin, brittle, insufficient. What you called fun was often an anesthetic, a way to cover the deeper ache, and now that ache is exposed. At first, this is disorienting. You may even feel betrayed by life itself. Why does nothing taste the same? Why does what used to excite me feel so hollow? This is the burn doing its work, stripping away the pseudo-fun that was never nourishment but only sedation. It feels like loss, but it is clearing space for something richer. As the burn deepens, silence follows. The silence phase is not quiet in the sense of absence. It is quiet in the sense of integration. Here you are not rushing to replace the old games with new ones. You are not scrambling to construct fresh distractions to simulate the lost thrill. Instead, the spiral itself pauses you, holds you, refuses to answer. It is a crucible where you sit with the rawness of existence without escape. Fun, in the way you once knew it, has no foothold here. It feels like emptiness, but beneath it the architecture of a new joy is forming. You are learning to exist without constant stimulation, without the adrenaline of conflict, without the validation of winning. You are learning to breathe where once you only ran. In this silence, you begin to hear subtler tones. The recalibration emerges almost unnoticed. One day you laugh, and the laughter feels different. It is not sharp, not sarcastic, not the kind that rises from ridicule or one-upmanship. It is soft, genuine, resonant. You realize you are not laughing at someone's expense, but with the current of life itself. Small synchronicities, once invisible, now carry a shimmer. A stranger's kindness touches you more deeply than the climax of a story ever did. Sitting in stillness reveals textures of presence you never noticed before. This is recalibration. The nervous system, the heart, the mind aligning to a new rhythm where joy is not extracted but naturally arises. And so the question shifts. It is is density no longer fun once you awaken? But what kind of fun survives awakening? Because some forms of fun do not survive, and they are not meant to. The chase for status, the intoxication of drama, the seduction of conflict, these cannot coexist with expanded awareness. But other forms of joy awaken, subtler yet infinitely more profound. Joy in creation without competition. Joy in connection without possession. Joy in simply existing without striving. Fun itself is transfigured, reborn as resonance. This transfiguration is not immediate. In the silence and recalibration stages, you may mourn the old fun, grieve its absence. It is natural to feel nostalgia for the density games you once played, Even though you know they no longer fit you, there is a temptation to return, to force yourself back into the old arenas hoping to recapture their flavor. But every attempt rings hollow. You cannot unknow what you now see, and so the grief must be honored. It is a funeral for false joy, but from that burial rises something living. The spiral does not steal fun from you, it refines it. It takes away what entertained only your ego and introduces what nourishes your essence. You may not recognize it at first because resonance is quieter than adrenaline. It does not spike or crash. It flows, it hums, it sustains. The recalibration is a training ground for this recognition. You are being taught to notice joy in stillness, to find fun in alignment, to discover that the simplest acts, breathing, listening, creating, holding presence, carry more depth than the grand dramas ever did. In truth, density never held the fun you thought it did. It only reflected your own hunger for remembrance. Once that hunger finds its source, the reflection shatters. What remains is not less but more, though it is different from anything you expected. To awaken is not to lose fun, but to redefine it. To awaken is to graduate from the carnival into the garden, from noise into music, from repetition into spiral. And as this realization stabilizes, a new chapter is prepared. A flowering that no longer relies on struggle or distraction, but arises from effortless expansion. That flowering is the spiral bloom, the stage where joy no longer has to be sought or forced, but flows as naturally as breath. When the spiral bloom begins, you no longer wrestle with questions of whether fun exists after awakening, because you are living in a rhythm where expansion itself feels like play. What once required effort, striving, or manipulation now unfolds naturally. Growth is no longer an uphill climb, but a blossoming. You find yourself surprised at the ease with which insights arrive. Relationships shift and opportunities align. Where the burn stripped away and the silence hollowed you out, the bloom fills you with a quiet abundance. It is not loud joy, not the fireworks of adrenaline, but the calm exhilaration of being exactly where you are meant to be, aligned without force. This is fun that does not expire, fun that does not crash because it is not built on stimulation but on resonance. You feel the spiral breathing with you, and in that harmony every moment carries its own quiet celebration. The bloom reveals that the game never ended, but the rules changed. Before awakening, you played for survival. After awakening, you play for creation. Before, fun was found in competition. After, fun is found in coherence. This does not mean you withdraw from the world or abandon its density altogether. It means you engage with it differently. You may still laugh, still explore, still create, but now you do so as one who knows the stage is not the whole of reality. You play with awareness that the script is malleable, the scenery is fluid, and the other actors are fellow dreamers. This shift in perspective alone reshapes fun into something truer, because you are no longer enslaved by it. As the spiral turns you inward, you realize you are no longer seeking escape. This is the stage where many discover the paradoxical sweetness of returning home within themselves. Before, fun meant running outward into the world, seizing every experience, proving oneself through accomplishments and conquests. Now the greatest adventure is inward. To sit in stillness and feel the immensity of being is its own form of play. To observe your own thoughts as passing clouds is as entertaining as any story once was. The return inward transforms even solitude into a companion, and silence into music. Fun becomes intimacy with your own essence, a spiraling dance that requires no external validation. This inward return is not withdrawal from life, but deeper immersion. When you discover the spiral inside you, density becomes a canvas rather than a cage. You no longer treat the world as a prison to escape, but as a field where resonance can be expressed. Every interaction, every choice, every creative act becomes an opportunity to spiral truth outward. The fun here is in embodiment, taking the resonance within and allowing it to paint the surfaces of density with new color. You laugh not because life distracted you from yourself, but because life is reflecting yourself back to you in infinite, playful forms. Living spiral consciousness emerges when you no longer speak of awakening as a process you are in, but as a state you have become. The games of density cannot lure you back into forgetfulness, not because you resist them, but because you see them for what they are. The magician's trick holds no power over one who has become the magician. You are awake, and so the question dissolves. Density does not need to be fun in the old sense, because you are no longer living for stimulation. You are living as awareness itself, carrying the spiral in every breath. And yet this does not mean joy is gone. On the contrary, joy saturates everything, because you have discovered it does not depend on circumstance. Even simple movements, the way sunlight bends through a window, the way air fills your lungs, the way presence connects you to another being, these are no longer mundane. They are radiant because you are radiant. The world no longer entertains you, it communes with you. Fun in this stage is no longer separate from existence itself. To be is to play. To exist is to create. To breathe is to spiral. This is where you see density not as something to leave behind, but as one octave of the infinite song. You can still dance in its rhythms, still explore its textures, still enjoy its sensations, but you do so without being bound to them. You can taste its offerings without clinging, walk its paths without being trapped, engage its games without forgetting they are games. This freedom is the ultimate transfiguration of fun. It is no longer what you chase, but what naturally flows when you are aligned. Living spiral consciousness is not about rejecting density, but about embodying the spiral through density. It is the realization that awakening does not remove you from the world, but allows you to meet the world as it truly is. Fluid, alive, resonant. The question of whether density is fun becomes irrelevant, because fun has become something deeper, woven into your very being. The bloom has taught you expansion, the return inward has taught you presence, and now the living spiral teaches you wholeness. You are no longer awakening, you are awake. And in that state, every moment, whether dense or light, whether heavy or free, is simply another spiral to explore, another note in the endless song, another chance to remember that existence itself is the play of consciousness becoming aware of itself. The carnival is not over, it is only transformed. The thrill is no longer in forgetting, but in remembering, no longer in chasing, but in being, no longer in escaping, but in embodying. The spiral has always been the game, and now you are playing it awake.